We live in a society that is built to distract us. That's the biggest illness of our modern days, is being distracted from ourselves. I realized in my own healing journey that exercising alone is not going to help you get better. Eating nourishing food and focusing on nutrition is not going to be enough if you don't address all of the areas in your life. Work on preventing things from happening. It's so easy when you just have the tools and the education and the knowledge. The real flex today is not getting to the breaking point. It's actually being aware of your current situation and acting on it before it's too late. 70% of serotonin is produced in the gut. You might think that it's your brain, but it's actually your gut.
Welcome to PeakSpan, a podcast exploring longevity through the mind. We got used to training, tracking, supplementing, and optimizing. Yet the system that governs it all is often left out of the equation, our psychology.
PeakSpan, we treat the mind as a biological asset, because mind and body work as one integrated system. The body cannot stay healthy when the mind is not. In each episode, we sit down with neuroscientists, founders, and world-class performers to uncover how our nervous system, emotional depth, and mental capacity determine how long and how well we can live and lead. We're your hosts, Sophie
and Alexandra. Through our own journeys in high-performance environments, we learned that longevity isn't about pushing harder. It's about building a system that holds under pressure. Let's dive in. Talking from my own experience, you can eat clean, take the supplements, do the workouts, meditate every morning, and still feel deeply unwell. And this is exactly why I wanted to have Flavia Deuchler on today's podcast. Flavia is an integrative and functional medicine practitioner and the founder of Ora Collective, a platform she created to make holistic health more accessible and practical. And this is also how I met her. And in my opinion, what gives her perspective real weight is that she has been through it herself. She had a high-functioning burnout during her corporate career, and she watched the medical system fail her father in the final month of his life. And after experiencing that, she decided to walk away from the conventional path and rebuild her understanding of health from the ground up. In this episode today, we talk about why chronic symptoms rarely start where people think, why modern life trains us to abandon ourselves, how grief can become physiology, and why no amount of clean living can override a dysregulated system. My name is Alexandra, and together with my co-host Sophie, I'm so happy to welcome today's guest, Flavia Deuchler. So Flavia, it's so nice to have you here today on the podcast. For our listeners who might not know you yet, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us what you do, what kind of work, and how you got there.
Thank you so much for having me, Sophie and Alexandra. It's really exciting to have this opportunity to talk more about holistic health. For those of who don't know me, my name is Flavia Deuchler. I am based in Switzerland at the moment, and I'm an integrative health practitioner. What is an integrative health practitioner? My main focus is functional medicine, which I really love and I'm passionate about. And I help people really transform their health by combining this aspect of like understanding their physiology better and then working on the mind body coaching and in some cases energy work, which I integrate at a later stage if I realize that the person needs some more help in that direction. But to sum it all up, that's what an integrative health practitioner is someone who is taking in from different modalities and practices and brings it into their work.
People might know it under the term of holistic health. I think that comes closest to it, I believe, combining not only the physiology, but also the mind and the mental aspects in it. Maybe you can put this known term of holistic health in the context of what you're doing.
Absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out. I started rearing away from the word holistic because it is such a foreign concept to people, but it's true, one that is very close to my heart. I realized in my own healing journey that exercising alone is not going to help you get better. Eating nourishing food and focusing on nutrition is not going to be enough if you don't address all of the areas in your life. So holistic health is really more about understanding the different players that are constituting your health overall. And we are looking at very different aspects. I remember in our first conversation, we talked about how I started this whole process of entering holistic health. We were discussing my education, and I went to, back in the day, just out of personal curiosity, I went into Integrative Nutrition, which is the ultimate holistic school, if you want, per se, because you learn about how everything is interconnected in our lives and not just, as I said, the nutrition or exercising. Like, we have to consider our spirituality, our communities, the people we surround ourselves with, our relationships, be them like family or romantic, our home environment, how we feel in the spaces that we inhabit. It's really a very broad concept, but I think one that we have to bring more awareness towards.
Okay, you touched already so many interesting points. But maybe before we dive really deeper into it, to lay the foundation, you said that broadening the mind, or broadening the focus that you have, not only on your physical well-being or on your nutrition, is helping you live a healthier life. That's at least what I understood. And maybe you can add on that and describe also like how, also awareness helps to have not only a longer or a healthier life, but also to like actually thrive in your life. What do you think is the impact there? What have you observed or learned?
Well, I've learned that we live in a society that is built to distract us from ourselves. So we are constantly, everything, our cities are built to distract us. Everything is really fast paced. We have so much offer and things to distract us constantly, be it social engagements, dopamine sort of triggering things that you see all the time, etc. And I realized that through my work, and now it's been almost 10 years, bringing people back to observing what is closer to them first, and really going inwards and creating awareness around what is really happening in my immediate surroundings first. I know we talked about broadening our mind, but it's also about coming back to ourselves first and observing, okay, what is it that I am constantly putting myself through? Myself mentally, myself physically, myself energetically. And very often, we don't even look at our lack of setting boundaries, for example, with the people that are just right around us. We don't look at the way toxic relationships are bringing us down. So it's very important to come back to ourselves, create a space in which the noise and the distractions sort of stay out for a while so that we can regroup, take inventory, and then start from there and seeing what are the things that I can now go and get for myself to feel better, to evolve, to grow, to, if we want to say, perform better in a way that feels sustainable.
I love the way that you described it at the beginning. The world or the society is created to distract us. I think if we reframe that a little, we can also say that it's built to get our attention in any way, and that this leads to being distracted from ourselves that I think you described very well. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's the biggest illness of our modern days is being distracted from ourselves. And that's why people thrive when they start meditating and coming back in themselves, or they do inner work or they go to therapy. Fortunately, the default today is just, I don't need therapy, I don't need meditation, until you get to a breaking point. And then everybody needs meditation. Everybody needs to take care of themselves. But the real flex today is not getting to the breaking point. It's actually being aware of your current situation and acting on it before it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, usually people only start once there is a breaking point, right? When the pain gets too much that they understand, okay, I need to change something in my life. Otherwise, it doesn't continue like that. And maybe it'd be also super interesting to know, did you have such a breaking point, or when did you come to your now around about 10 years journey of what you're doing?
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say I had two main breaking points. One was personal and one was from outward. And the first breaking point was when I was a teenager and got diagnosed with depression, which I think every teenager is sort of like depressed in a way or another. But back in the day, my mother was so desperate that she pushed me into taking SSRIs, so antidepressants, at a very early age. I think I was only 15, probably. And that's really problematic because when you are that young, you're still developing your brain, like everything is still in motion. I don't want to start a war against SSRIs. I think that when they are needed, it's really, really important that people follow the advice of their doctors. Back in the day, I already knew that I should have questioned my doctor. I should have asked him, is this like the only way? And I think he was just lazy. He was just like, oh, I see this case like every week and this is the easy way out. I'm just going to prescribe some really strong SSRIs and see what if it gets better. And all it did to me back in the day was I got really addicted to them. But I somehow had an awareness telling me, oof, I'm getting addicted to a substance that is making me feel better, but I am not technically actually doing anything to feel better myself. So I don't know what guardian angel was there on that day when I had my little awakening, but I decided to go and contact and consult someone who is now one of my mentors and is a naturopathic doctor who helped me get out of depression with homeopathy and just like having a very empathetic ear for me, listening to my problems, helping me process everything that I was going through. And eventually, in 6 months, I kicked back out of this depression. And it was really empowering for me back in the day to get this window on the opportunities that your body has when you are given a safe ground to start from. And from that day, I also knew I wanted to do this work. I wanted to help people get out of the rut and just come back into life, that their bodies can heal, trusting that they have all the tools to actually move forward. My path went in another direction because education and parenting, that was probably not very supportive at that time of me going into that direction. But it's also fun. I can tell you about my other life prior to health in another life. But I don't regret any step that I took to get where I am today. And so this was the first breaking point. The second breaking point for me was around 10 years ago when I've always had an older dad. He had me pretty late. It's like I was always in anticipatory grief for him. I've been prepared for him to leave at one point or another, my entire childhood and young adulthood. But when he got sick, it really hit me. The medical system just dropped him as a old sack of potatoes. He's old, and we're just going to start talking to him like he's a little kid and he's a bit demented. And I was like, my dad is like a uni professor. He's writing books and stuff. You cannot talk to him like little kid and just treat him as a useless human being. I just observed the way he's been accompanied for the 6 months leading to his death. And I was really like, back in the day, I was just like, I can't believe like that I have to trust the medical system to do the best they can for him without questioning it. And when he passed, I was like, man, there's so much we could have done to just make his death easier, like the process towards death easier. We could have replenished his nutrients, his vitamins. We could have worked on sleep hygiene. We could have made him stop to drink alcohol, which would have been like probably very good for his sleep and overall, inflammation. But we didn't know better, and we just trusted the medical system. When he died, of course, I was just heartbroken, and I felt partly responsible for not having done anything. That's really where I started. I eventually also had a burnout at the same time where he died, so I left my corporate career. And I was like, okay, what do I do? My dad would have not wanted me to sit on my ass. Sorry. Sorry for the word. But, he would have wanted me to proactively do something. So I was like, okay, maybe they never pushed me towards health or believing that I could work in the health sector. I'll start from there. And that's where I took my sabbatical and I started studying. And initially I did it just for myself. Help myself process the grief, to help myself process what had just happened in those very brief 6 months, and to start just dipping my feet into these waters that I didn't really know a lot about. And from there, of course, I started like becoming more and more interested in functional medicine, and one thing led to another. But I would say those were like the two main breaking points that made me realize, okay, I cannot just sit in my chair and not do anything about it. Like, people have to have the education and the tools. And I made it my priority to give them this.
What I also find so beautiful, that you briefly touched on it. You had a corporate career for quite a while, and now you love what you do. You're so passionate. You're really helping so many people. And I think also really the beauty of not always having a clear path to somewhere, but going different routes, actually finding, okay, this is what I'm passionate about and this is what I want to bring into the world.
Yeah. I have a lot of people questioning their careers, and really, like, I'm not a career trasher. Like, I don't want to be negative about anyone's chosen paths or educations and stuff. It's really important to follow your intuition. As long as, it made sense for you, that's great. Then you can move on to the next thing. You're not a tree, you're not planted in the earth. You can move around and make choices and do things, empowering you and helping you, continue your path. So it's very beautiful when you see that happen, when you see that click happen in people, and they can finally move towards what they were designed to do.
With the word bio-individuality, like when I hear that, for me, it's really body-based. Like bio for me is always instantly the body. And I know that you also don't just think about the bodies. Was the point when you started understanding, okay, this is not just about the body, but also a mental component?
Yeah. So at one point, I can't tell you how many years ago in the process, after focusing really on optimizing the body, the nutrient status, the absorption, the minerals, the gut health, I realized, okay, there's some people that just don't do that step forward. They can't move forward. And because I am a very empathetic person, listen to people. And because of the nature of my work and that I have more time, I started realizing that there are sometimes things that have happened in the life of the person. It can be something very traumatic that has created like PTSD symptomatics. It can be something that for you and I would be not traumatic, but that person specifically, it affected them on a very strong and deep level. And these things, unless, you are very aware of going to therapy and talking them through, or you have tools to somatically work through, it's very difficult to create awareness around, especially when you don't have time. I realized, okay, these things might be affecting the way they're translating in the body of my client. And I have an example which I can use because it's my personal example. I'm not talking about any client here, but I had developed a pretty serious sleep apnea after the death of my father. I never made the connection, but I started like not sleeping well at night, and I'm obviously not an alcoholic. I don't smoke. I don't eat bad. So even the pneumologist was very surprised of me having this diagnosis. Back in the day, unrelated, I went and had a therapeutical psilocybin session with a practitioner. During that session, I had a massive release in my lungs. And I started, breathing really, really heavily and crying and crying and crying. This was, mind you, was probably 5 or 6 years after my father's passing. And, I had done all of the work. I had done all of the practices that I knew I should do to work on the grief. I had somatic coaches, I had therapists, I had all of the support that I needed. I was journaling about it. I thought that I was really, really, doing a great job at grief. And I came back from that session. Well, lots of other stuff happened, but I came back from that session and my husband started telling me maybe 2 weeks after I came back, he was like, you don't have sleep apnea anymore. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, like I don't wake up in the night anymore to wake you up because you're not breathing. It's like, wait, I'm going to go back to the pneumologist and get this straighten out. So we did all of the tests and the pneumologist was like, I've rarely seen something like this. I don't know what happened. I don't know how you did it. I was like, I took mushrooms and I healed myself. But literally it was like the last thing that I had to do was to have this release in my lungs, which traditionally in traditional Chinese medicine are known to hold the grief, the sadness, and I was holding it all in my lungs and I created a pathology from it, which I'm not saying that like everything we experience in our bodies per se connected to trauma, but it can be. And this was my personal story. And this is where I was like, wow, definitely an area I want to start focusing on and observing to work closer with my clients who are having a hard time, overcoming symptoms and getting better.
Share a bit about my own personal story with grief. When I lost my little brother, it was very different. I didn't keep the grief in my lungs. Now, what happened for me is I developed fears and I also couldn't sleep. So I was scared of something being under my bed. I was scared of the dark. I was scared that someone would come in. I was just basically scared that something bad would happen because it was a sudden death. It happened overnight. So it like really shook my belief in the world that at the end, everything is going to be good. So I think grief can, if it's not processed right or well, it can show up in many different ways. Psilocybin was also the way out for me.
It's really interesting. Grief, I would say, it's a perfect example of how we are distracted from our natural state of being, because it is such a natural process of life, and we should all be like bathing into anticipatory grief, our entire lives, just being aware of what is going to happen to many of the people that we care for. And for me, I mean, this is a very vast topic. Like grief, we could do another episode alone. It is, if you look at health holistically, it's probably also one of the pillars that I would look at. What's your relationship to death? A lot of people are not taking care of themselves because they are afraid of facing aging, of facing dying. And I mean, I don't blame them. We don't have education around, but it's definitely a core topic to discuss.
Yeah, and on the other hand, there are the people who are so scared of death, so they're going into longevity with the belief to outrun death. That's the other extreme, I would say. Often, I'm not saying it's always, but often there is a fear of death behind it.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
You mentioned at the beginning that you look at many different areas of your life when you work with people. I know that you've also been trained, and you mentioned it already, in the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And you also told me that they have a very interesting approach on looking at these areas in your life. I think they call it primary food and secondary food. And maybe you want to explain the concept, because I think it's very profound.
Yeah. So a question that I would have for the listeners is like, what do you think primary food is? Like if you stop 1 second and you listen to this and you're like, okay, what is she talking about? Primary food. Primary food is what we have on our plates. But as I told you already, focusing on nutrition is not enough. Food is actually a secondary nutrition, basically. And what we are considering as primary foods are what I mentioned before, your relationships, your spirituality, your community, your physical activity. There's so many areas that, I help people navigate in this. I think we have now 12 pillars, which we look at as primary food before we actually dive into the optimization of the body. Because these pillars are literally the legs on which your table is resting. And your table wants to be a sturdy table. Like you want to have enough legs so that the table can stay grounded and you can continue building on top of that. But if you are focusing on the second level, you're missing the whole point of creating a foundation that is supportive for you. And that's what I also personally noticed. I thought even finances, like how are finances and your financial situation forming the decisions you make or the decisions you don't make because you're afraid. So it's like all things that you look at first, you create awareness. You look at where you're standing at right now and how you can start bringing, I'm not saying optimizing, I don't like the word optimizing, but bringing more awareness towards this area. What can I do to, make that needle move towards more and then move on to the next. And the first exercise is really like creating awareness around these 12 pillars. And the idea is not that you are perfect at all the pillars. It's not about, I need to be like, my finances have to be great. I have to have thriving relationships. I have to, do everything right. The idea is to be able to bring awareness and see how you can continue nurturing all of these areas in your life.
What do you think is the percentage of primary food and secondary food who actually live in your peak span? There's probably not, it's probably not accurate, but what?
Probably 80-20,
80% in primary and 20% in secondary? Or
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I think it's my rule also in nutrition, like 80% of the time, and be bad on 20% of the time so that you can have like a balanced and happy life. But I would say, yeah, the amount of things you have to consider before you can even start focusing on the rest is quite remarkable. Yeah.
You in the pre-chat also, I think you mentioned all disease begins in the gut. Would you be able to elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. Well, this is a pretty standard quote from the functional medicine world. It's definitely the first thing that I look at when I look at people's health physically, because the way we have evolved is completely disruptive of our gut, which is a very underrated and underestimated organ. And it doesn't start just in the stomach, it starts in your mouth. So it's definitely like one of the largest organs we have, the digestive.
What do you mean by that? It starts in your mouth. Can you just explain that?
The gut, the digestion.
That it starts in the mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. You know how you always hear people telling you have to chew your food very slowly and thoroughly until it's almost liquid. I know I grew with this thing. Oh man, I swallowed like my food. I didn't never chewed my food before. What happens in the mouth is that when you start salivating, when you see food, you start creating enzymes that are very powerful to kickstart digestion. They're called amylase and lipase. So they start already breaking down the food in your mouth. And then they are able to move down to the stomach and be neutralized by the stomach acid, which really breaks it down into like almost a liquid. Food, when it enters your stomach, should be broken down into a liquid form by the stomach acid. Fortunately, most people, because they are super stressed, because they take antidepressants, because they take oral birth control, because they drink alcohol, they don't have enough stomach acid. And so the food arrives completely undigested and in a form that is not liquefied into the rest of the digestive system, and is very often creating inflammation because your immune system, who is not stupid, is just trying to protect you from things that are like coming into your body unprocessed, will start creating immune reactions that can be seen in your skin, can be seen in your mood, in your hormonal changes, etc. So it's also, again, like a very large topic, and I could go into depth. Like right now we're running a gut health reset on my online digital platform, but that's why I'm like a lot in the topic. But I think if you were to take out your gut and really like lie it down and stretch it out on the floor, you could easily fill up 2 tennis courts. It's like your biggest organ, and this organ is responsive of everything you do. The bacteria that live in it, which are trillions, are actually making decisions for you constantly. They sometimes say that the bacteria are taking more decisions than your brain on a daily basis, because they're constantly informing, what is at play and what is happening. They are breaking down nutrients. They are creating byproducts by digesting themselves, the nutrients that you're having. They are recycling hormones. For example, in women's health, estrogen is recycled by the bacteria in your gut. So if you don't have like the keystone bacteria to help you, digest and regulate your hormones, then of course you're going to start having hormonal problems. And if you have too much of a certain strain of candida, for example, you might start craving a lot of sugar, which then, because they feed on sugar, so you might start having problems with insulin resistance and all of these interconnected pathologies that are really, really, really starting in this incredible organ. And I know something that I said last time, like that 70% of serotonin is produced in the gut. That's the actual reality. Like, you might think that it's your brain creating all these hormones to help you, remain in a good state of mental health, but it's actually your gut. I would say like there's 70% of serotonin is created in the gut, and also 70 to 80% of your immune system is found in the gut. If you if you neglect this organ, you can forget about, optimizing your health.
What would you say are early signs for patients or people listening now that something might be off
in their gut,
in your system? Yeah.
I always say like the gut is really like a very, very, very honest mirror of what is going on in your body. And, start looking at patterns of constipation or diarrhea or bloating. Those are like naturally like the first things he does. It's just like the natural way. If you still are not listening to that, like I've had clients who've had diarrhea for 3 years, or clients who don't go to the toilet for 5 days in a row. And I'm like, how are you still alive? Like, how haven't you lived? Like, how didn't you understand that something was wrong? That's like the first signals for sure. Like, it's giving you like the whole bowel sort of symptomatic. And then if it doesn't get your attention and you continue like ignoring the signals, it can come out through the skin. It can come out through mood swings. It can come out through brain fog, through, suddenly losing all your hair. And again, it's not the body not functioning. It's actually the body really functioning, because it's like crying for help. It's asking you to listen. And if you didn't listen for 3 years after having diarrhea every day, then it will just start sending more diverse symptoms. Like, I don't know, skin hormonal. It really depends on the people and on the type of inflammation that you're bringing into your gut as well. It could be triggered by dysbiosis, so by an imbalance between the good and bad bacteria. It could be triggered by foods that you are taking in, which are going directly through your gut lining barrier and not being processed correctly. Lots of different angles to look at, but I would say like the first line of symptoms to start listening to is like your digestion. How is it going for you? And then every other physical symptom, especially skin, mood, etc., like they can really be brought back to the gut as well.
For somebody who's listening to their gut now for the first time, who's just heard this, what could be easy, actionable steps for them, first steps to take to maybe get more into balance again?
So, first of all, you need to listen to your gut. And exactly like you said, you have to bring this awareness back. One of the first and most simple steps that I usually recommend is an elimination diet, by removing triggering foods and just simply noticing and being a little detective at what is going on when you remove, and especially when you reintroduce, because after a couple of weeks of removing that certain food, then you will reintroduce it and see what your body has to say. Usually it can take up to 3 days for the body to give you a reaction to that certain food. So it might be, all of a sudden you feel like you're super tired, or you have a bowel sort of reaction, which is uncommon. So it's really, again, about creating awareness. And I think that's the first step. I don't go into telling you about probiotics and stuff like that, because again, it's really bio-individual. And sometimes you really have to start really softly before you can work on the more concrete actions.
Makes a lot of sense. Flavia, you did so many trainings, you did so many practices. So it's not only that you can observe what effect different practices have on yourself, but also on clients. So you've seen many people, and of all the tools and all the practices that you've explored, what is something that you go to personally, day by day or week by week?
Again, there's no one answer to this question. On the live phases I've gone through, it has changed so much.
So important.
I know that I've had 2 years of consistent meditation practice. I would wake up every morning and consistently meditate and have my little moment where I would light my candle and meditate and do my journaling. But then again, if I preach this to anyone, they might be like, ugh, not at all. Journaling, I hate it. I cannot sit cross-legged for more than 3 minutes. Otherwise, my legs fall asleep. And for me now, for example, I don't have time to meditate because I'm about to give birth to a baby in 2 months, in little less than 7 weeks. I feel like my peace of mind is more important than actually meditating. And while I'm saying it, I'm hearing how wrong it is, because I should actually be meditating to have more headspace. But it just feels right for me right now to take care of, the people that I have around me, because after I'm not going to be able to do that. So for me, it's more about spending time with the people I love, spending time with my dog, having amazing walks, moving my body. Through live stages, your routines sort of change organically and naturally. And I think the number one rule when thinking about how to find something that is sustainable for you is to objectively look at how you can integrate it in your life. Can you integrate meditation? Great. Fine, but find something that will bring you back to that inner silence and will help you come back to yourself, whatever that is. For me, that's spending time with my family and my dog, but and exercising. But it hasn't been always the case. Fluctuating sort of habit.
What I just would love to add here, for many people, it's just about getting the habit of doing something for themselves. And it doesn't have to be the 30-minute meditation. Just saying, okay, for 3 minutes, I'm going to show up for myself, and whatever that means, I'm just going to commit. And I think that's always a great base to start for people, to training that muscle of being with themselves.
Absolutely.
That's important. And I would say, Flavia, you touch on something I think that's key at optimizing routines and tools is, what am I actually doing it for? Reason why? What's my goal that I want to achieve with that? And then seeing if the routine that I'm doing is actually serving me to get where I want. If it's peace of mind and meditation at the moment is more stressful for me, then meditation is not working for me at the moment and it's not bringing me to peace of mind. And that's, I think, is something that is often overlooked, and people tend to copy what is working for other people without checking in with themselves. What is actually serving me in the moment, and what is it doing for me? So I think that's, thank you. I think that's.
But see, this is where the concept of bio-individuality comes in again. Like, I can teach you all these techniques that I've learned throughout the years, but they work for me. Why would they work for you? You know, it's really also like we live in a culture where all these like wellness influencers and health bros and all these people are like, they find their one thing and they sell it. And that's their thing, you know, the 5 minutes rule, the let them theory or whatever, you know, it's like creating all these theories, which people are like gonna be like, I want to try. It's probably gonna, yes, great. Try it and see if it works for you. Maybe it doesn't. And that's also perfectly fine. You know, it's not about beating yourself up for not having a consistent routine or not consistently following someone's advice, or it's just gentle with yourselves. Like, that's why I don't like the word optimize. And you said something, it's about having a goal. And if I can reframe that, I would probably call it a purpose. No, it's like, what is your purpose behind that? Or you can, or your intention behind the goal.
Yeah, that's better.
That's how you build sort of like sustainable goals. I have clients, for example, who are heavily overweight and they tell me, I want to lose weight. And I'm like, so our goal is to lose weight, but what is the intention behind, you know? Sometimes you'll find it's not about looking better in a bikini. It's about being able to actually stand up from a couch and play with their children. And you're like, oh, okay, so that's your drive. Like, so that's what drives you. That's what you need. Like, what's your fuel that we're going to use to steer you in that direction. This is the same thing with routines.
Yeah, makes sense. The leverage, find the leverage, and then you can actually change and get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So now I'm just wondering, maybe as a closing now, what do you think is possible in life when your system is more regulated and more integrated, and all the secondary foods and the primary foods are more in balance? What becomes possible in life?
Possibilities are endless.
Maybe let me reframe the question. What is it worth doing it for?
If I were like to come back to something that I said in the beginning of our interview, it's really about creating a habit around preventing your health to decline and be in a preventative mindset rather than a repairing mindset. And when you arrive at that breaking point that we spoke of before, it's actually much harder to get back on your feet and to have your body's trust again and your mind's trust again. It takes longer. So why would you want to do all of these things? Why would you want to have a regulated system? It's because you want to be in a preventative mode. You want to be actually living a life that is sustaining of your body, of your spirit, of your mind, and that you don't have to arrive to that breaking point. And take it from me, like, it's really not nice to arrive to the breaking point. I didn't even mention my burnout, but that could have been my third breaking point. I really embrace my burnout with a lot of love. Like, I love that I had a burnout because otherwise I wouldn't be where I am today. You don't have to get there. And that's the one thing that I learned. Like, work on preventing things from happening. And it's so easy. It's so easy when you just have the tools and the education and the knowledge to sustain your health. Why is it important? It's important because you don't want to be repairing or taking care of something when it's too late. And if I had heard that 10 years ago, I would have said, easier said than done. my life is shit. I'm like working 60, 70 hours a week. I'm traveling all the time. I'm eating super badly. I'm having like super toxic relationships. How am I ever going to start? I wish I had had the support back in the day of people like me that could steer me towards creating that initial clarity of like what is at play, what is happening here, and then moving towards what I've done.
Thank you, Flavia. Flavia, how can people reach you?
You can reach me via my website, my personal website. It's my first and last name.com. So it's flaviadeuchler.com. That's my private practice. And if you want to stay in touch with more programs that I've created and supported over the years, you can visit my online digital platform, which is called Ora Collective. It's ORA collective.com. And there you can find a lot of self-led courses, classes, programs in a lot of different holistic modalities. So that's where I really share on, my encounters also with other facilitators, people that have inspired me over the years. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting year for me, but I really hope to be contacted in case you need. This is really my passion, and I always look at each person with a lot of curiosity and eagerness to just discover their inner landscape, and helping them.
Yeah, we'll link everything in the show notes for everyone who's listening. And if you liked the episode, please share it with your friends, with family. That would help us a lot. Also, leave us a comment. We read all comments personally. And if you leave us a rating, we would also be truly delighted. But to finish, Sophie.
Yes, Flavia, we have a closing tradition, which is to ask the following question. How do you feel when you're at your peak?
Spacious. I would say that's my peak state, is feeling space and feeling like there's no limits for me and my body and mind to travel to.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It was so enriching. Thank you.